Hi, welcome to Psychic Tapestry. I'm Ken Kessler, and she's Toni DeMaio. Hi, Toni.
Hi, Ken. Hi, everybody. So nice
And
to be here.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So nice to be here.
Oh, nice to have you
Yeah,
here. Thank you.
thank you.
Um, I wanted to kick things off with um, by mentioning a couple things since we have made this change to recording these on Zoom, and I just wanted to sort of explain for anybody who is finding this podcast now or finding us again that
Mhm,
we are doing this on Zoom just about every other Tuesday. There was a storm yesterday here, so we
mhm.
moved it to Wednesday. Um, if you're listening to this later on, you don't care. So, anyhow, um, but usually every other Tuesday, we record it on Zoom. Sometimes uh, we have an audience. we have we have people who come in to weigh in on topics or to just get readings. And sometimes we don't. And either way, that's okay. We're doing it this way because we want to be able to get our messages out to reach more people. That's the goal.
Mhm.
Um, it's not a money making thing. Trust me, Psychic Tapestry costs me money every month.
Oh,
And don't cry for me, Argentina. I love doing it. I'm happy to
me
do it.
too.
I just want to go ahead and dispel any idea that this was a change to somehow line our pockets because it doesn't cost anything to listen to this. We after making this change, we have all of our episodes. We're approaching 900. All the
Wow.
episodes of Psychic Tapestry are available almost everywhere that you stream and download podcasts. And again, if you're listening to this, duh, you know, because you found us and you're
Mhm.
listening to it. We're also the podcast is also now available on YouTube, and it is just audio, at least at this point. We might get
Mhm.
to a point where we put the video up too, but we're just trying to, one step at a time. We're just
Mhm.
doing that. So, the ways to connect are still the same. We're on Facebook and Twitter, or X if you prefer. You can find us at facebook.com/psychic tapestry or at psychic tapestry on Twitter or X. And every other Tuesday, almost every other Tuesday, you can find us here. We have a website, psychictapestry.com, that has a calendar that I try really hard to remember to update so you can always see when the next show is coming. Hopefully, you can see that. If it's not on there, give me a hard time about it. Message me and go, "Hey, Ken, you forgot again," and I'll get in there and fix that. Um, but that's mostly it. A little bit about doing it on Zoom this way is that once we start to get into a topic or start talking to guests, it's hard to do that and let more people in. I know in the past when we were on Blog Talk Radio, you could call any old time that the show was on and get in the queue. And it's not quite like that here. And it's just a growing pain. And if you want to attend live, just try and get here a couple minutes early and get in the waiting room, and I will let you right in. I promise. Really, I really will.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's all of the housekeeping, I suppose. We wanted to talk about Mercury in retrograde tonight.
Mhm.
Mercury is still in retrograde as of the recording of this on Wednesday, August 21st. And it's supposed to stay in retrograde until next Tuesday, the 27th. And then there is a thing that some refer to as shadow Mercury, which
Oh, no.
which can take another week or two beyond that. And we're gonna kind of delve into the whole thing. I have a bunch of info on it, and so does Toni.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk about this because it comes up several times a year, and people just want to go ahead and blame everything that is wrong in their life or has gone wrong
hmm
on this. And I thought we would get into what it is. I know, Tony, you have some feelings about it.
I
So,
do.
um, so first, what do you have as far as what is Mercury in retrograde?
Okay. Mercury in retrograde is actually an optical illusion. It appears as if it's going backwards in the sky,
That's the
but it
planet Mercury.
really, right, the planet Mercury, but it really isn't. And, the planets are orbiting around the sun at different speeds. And this is why there are times when Mercury appears as if it's going backwards. That's what they say. And the closer to the sun, the faster the orbiting speed. So, for some reason, this optical illusion seems to make everybody crazy. And to me, this feels like the dark ages, when people used to look up at the rainbows and saw great meaning in the sky and all these weird things. And I don't know, it's very hard for me to buy into it. Yet I see that electronics do fail us so often during Mercury retrograde. Other things happen. And I have my story about my psychic tapestry Mercury retrograde story.
Mhm.
Years ago, when Ken and I were doing the Blog Talk radio show, which was our other platform, it was Mercury retrograde, and he was talking about it, and people were talking about it on the show. And I just couldn't take it anymore because I just don't believe in it. And I didn't then. And I said, I don't believe in that. How could that be anything that makes it's not logical? It's not real. And then my husband at the time came flying into the office where we were taping the show and said, "You'll never believe what just happened. The big tree in the front of the yard, a huge branch just fell and crushed your car." And Ken laughed so hard and so long. And so did I. And the two of us are howling like idiots there, just because we're crazy, I guess. But still, of course, insurance covered it. It was okay. But the point is, I said at the time, I'm never going to say that I don't believe in Mercury retrograde. And here I am again, tempting fate. But
Oh,
seriously, do you have an explanation for why an optical illusion is causing all of these things to happen, like brain fog, irritability, stress, breakdown of electronics,
well,
problems with communication, all of it?
I don't want to, I mean, this is tied into the god Mercury, the messenger
Okay.
of, and so there's the connection to communication and plans and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and I don't want to take anything away from Mercury if you're listening. I don't want to take anything
They
away
may
from
be.
you.
Mercury may be listening. It's a
Yes.
possibility.
But I think that at least part of it is that a lot of this stuff happens all the time. And
Yeah.
when Mercury's in retrograde, we want to blame. We want to
Ah,
blame somebody. We want to, why is why is my computer, why is it not working? Oh my God. How many times a week does that happen, whether Mercury's in retrograde or not? Technology has been the greatest thing and the worst thing at the same.
right.
And we're constantly, you're always having trouble. People don't get your email, or they say they don't get your email, or your flight is delayed or canceled. It happens all the time. But when Mercury is in retrograde, we're like, oh, I shouldn't have even bothered booking that flight because Mercury's in retrograde.
Right.
But you don't say a month from now when it's not, you don't say that. Then it's just stupid airlines or
Right.
whatever it is, or
Right.
Gmail's not working, or on and on and on. I mean, there was a big oh, I don't remember the company, but there was a big internet problem about a month ago was making the news. It affected all kinds of flights, and it affected all kinds of everything. Businesses had to be closed. Banks couldn't do transactions. And you know what? Mercury was not in retrograde when that happened.
Right.
But those things
That's
happen
true.
all the time, but we just kind of highlight when it happens during these few weeks when Mercury's in retrograde. And I think that it's part of human nature to want to have something to blame, someone to blame whenever anything doesn't go right. I didn't win the lottery last night. Thanks, Mercury. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I never mind the
Yeah.
fact that the last, you know, however many times I've played, because I've never won. But now we're ready to blame Mercury,
Right.
and Mercury, if you're listening, I feel for you because it's not fair that you get the blame for all of this. And Mercury in retrograde goes back, I couldn't believe it. It goes back to like 3000 BC.
Uh-huh.
And
I believe it.
I didn't know that they even knew. I don't, how did they, how did they have, how did they know that the planet Mercury the, looked like it was going backwards? How
Well,
did
they
they
had nothing
know?
else to do but look up at the sky, I
Yeah,
guess.
but can you look up at the sky and see Mercury?
Not me,
No,
but I
not
guess
me.
if there were, but I guess if it was 3000 BC, I'd have nothing else to do.
Perhaps, but
Right?
that it's been and it didn't have the power that it has now. It was more
Mhm.
like for those who followed astrology, it was more like if Mercury in retrograde was going on, then they treated whatever the reading was for astrology like, well, Mercury's in retrograde, so that's probably not going to happen. And
Right.
that was the extent of it. But being humans, we like to build and make
Yep.
things more complicated and more difficult. And it took, this was 3000 BC, but it took until the 1980s when they started blaming delays on Mercury in retrograde. And there weren't really computers for everybody in the 1980s,
Nope.
but once that came along, oh, now that's something else that Mercury is responsible for. So all of that, all this real madness around it has been, most of it has been in the last 40 years that we've been
Hmm.
assigning all of these things, all these technological problems are because Mercury's in retrograde. All of everything
Yeah.
that we decide we want to blame. It's almost like it's fashion to be able to blame Mercury for this. I was really surprised when I was looking into this because I didn't want to just do this off the cuff and talk about it. I wanted to find some real sources and get some real information about Mercury in retrograde. And I was surprised that I found interesting information in the Old Farmer's Almanac first,
Oh, yeah.
and then
Good
from
stuff.
CNN and from the BBC. I was
Wow.
really surprised because I thought it would be stuff like, I don't know, Hay House,
Hmm.
you know, different psychics and mediums who were talking about it, different publications that catered to the metaphysical community. That's what I figured I was going to come across, but I was really surprised to see this stuff and that it was. I, I'm constantly maybe not constantly, but often surprised at things that I find in the Old Farmer's Almanac, and it deserves,
Yeah.
it deserves a little bit of your attention. I know it's old school. Well, it's got old in the name, but it's online now, farmersalmanac.com,
Yep.
I think. Um, but it was very interesting that it had all this information, including the current dates for Mercury in retrograde, and the next
Yeah.
one. And I'm sorry to say, the next one is a couple days starts a couple days before Thanksgiving,
Oh, boy.
November 25th. So really, and let me just say this about that: it's a few days before Thanksgiving. It is the biggest travel time of the whole year.
Yep.
And every single year, there are all kinds of Thanksgiving horror stories about travel. Flights being delayed, flights being canceled, people being stranded in places happens all the time. But this year, you got somebody to blame if you want, because Mercury in retrograde happens from November 25th to December 15th. So there's a little chunk of that for you, um, courtesy of the Old Farmer's Almanac. I don't even know if they call it the Old Farmer's Almanac or it's just the Farmer's Almanac now. Um, but it even mentions that there's that some astrologers believe that there is a short shadow period of a couple weeks as Mercury turns around and moves forward again, although it's always moving forward, but now it looks like it.
Yeah.
So,
Now it looks
so
like
they tell you to, and it's a couple more weeks of complaining about your email and everything else. Cars making a funny sound, whatever. I'm not wishing any of this on anybody, but it happens. That stuff happens all the time. And the shadow thing is relatively new. I don't remember, I remember hearing about Mercury in retrograde for years, but it seems like it has been recent that they talk about the shadow period before and after. It's like it's winding
Mhm.
up for things to go crazy. And and the other thing about all of this is that I think that there is so much hype about it. I mean, CNN and the BBC are talking about it, that we give it energy, we give it power,
That's a good point.
and that matters. Words mean
It
things, your
does.
energy means a lot. And if something goes wrong, and it could be anything, you could miss the light and you're stuck at a light and you think, stupid Mercury in retrograde. You're giving it that
Yeah,
power
we're giving it
and
power.
you're giving it that energy, and enough people do it, and they do, that
Yeah,
lots
it
of the stuff
becomes a
happens.
thing.
I mean, I didn't cancel or postpone this podcast from last night, um, because of Mercury in retrograde. There was a
No.
big thunderstorm coming. And when that happens in the part of Florida where I am, electricity and internet are fragile.
Mhm.
And I didn't want that to happen
Right.
for a couple of reasons. I didn't want it to happen because it's a pain to put this all together and then have it ruined because there's a storm. But I didn't want it to happen because it would look like we were going, oh, Mercury in retrograde, that means nothing, and then have the whole thing go gone. Um,
Yes.
so we're back again, but I think that we give stuff like this energy, and enough
Yes.
of us do, that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're almost expecting something to go wrong. And I know there are some people that feel that way about Mercury in retrograde, that they want to just almost hide, stay
Yeah,
inside, don't want to go
they
anywhere, don't
do.
want to. And if you feel so strongly that everything is going to go wrong, guess what? It's all going to go wrong.
That's
You're
right.
you're putting that energy out there. You're also not being as cautious as you usually are. So you're going to make a mistake, and then you're going to blame Mercury in retrograde, and then you're going to think this proves it, and it's going to just go from there. Um, there is nothing wrong with stepping back, with taking an extra minute to get your bearings and to think things through. Nothing wrong with that. Um, but if you can start to kind of do that, it loosens its grip on you, because you don't get into that manic, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, everything's going wrong.
That's a great point. And I found in my notes there is something that Mercury in retrograde is actually good for. It's a good time to reconnect with all of your old friends, or to look for lost items, or to review financial matters. And I don't know why that would be, but that's what they say. But most people do tend to play it safe, and they're afraid to start a new job. I mean, I talk to them in the course of my readings every day, and especially during Mercury retrograde. I'm if I get this job, what if they want me to start? What should I do? And I'm thinking, well, if you've waited for a job for a year and a half and you get one, you go to work.
Yeah.
Don't worry
Yeah.
about Mercury retrograde, try to not give it the powers, truthfully. But people are afraid to start anything new. And it fascinates me how people have physical symptoms from it. Because some people say they have more energy, and some people say they have less. And also lots of nervous energy. People with anxiety feel like they feel worse during that time. And it can sap the zest of life. They're saying just take all the joy out of your life and leave you feeling lethargic, or it could fill you up with this chaotic, scattered energy. That's what I found. That might have you feeling restless, unfocused, anxious, all of that. And what can we do about it? Well, there's a whole list. I don't know if you want to get into it. Maybe you want to talk about that later.
Well,
But
I thought this was interesting. In CNN's article, they talked
mhm,
to an astrologist who said that the message during retrograde should be to slow down, take a mental vacation, reflect, redo, reimagine.
I
Just
like
take a
that.
time. And I think that's great. And I don't feel like it's because Mercury's in retrograde. I feel like it's because we've given it this power
Yeah,
that maybe you should slow down, take a
yeah,
little mental break, think a little bit more before you talk, before you send that email, before you do whatever you're going to do, before you sign that contract, before anything. Just take an extra moment to think about it and reclaim your energy and
I
try to
like that.
make it positive.
Right. I mean, if you're a Reiki master, you could Reiki the situation.
Yeah.
That's an idea, right? You can send positive energy, even if you're not a Reiki master. You can send any type of positive energy to the situation. Just think in a more positive way, and that should counteract it. That's what I think. I don't know, though.
I think I think the god Mercury, the messenger, probably thinks this is all hilarious
I bet.
because we're getting all worked up over Mercury and retrograde, which is an illusion. It's
Yeah,
not even real. What
there
we're
you go.
seeing is not really happening. And yet we're deciding that this thing that we're seeing that isn't really happening, that we know isn't happening, is leading us to believe all of this other stuff that wouldn't be happening if we weren't so focused on everything going wrong.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, I found a list of things that you could do during Mercury retrograde to make it
Okay.
easier. But it just seems silly to me, quite honestly. I don't even know if I want to give voice to it. It says things like, don't rush into important decisions. That's counterproductive to what I really believe. I mean, well, maybe not rush into anything that's important. But the point is, I guess just be mindful of it, like you were saying before. Be very mindful. And it says, don't sign contracts too quickly. And that's always good advice. So get them checked out by the proper person, like an attorney or something, before you sign a contract. And don't launch any new project in a casual way, they said.
And
But
really, that's
usually
good
when you do,
advice any
that's
time
good
of year.
advice. That's what I thought. And don't make any major purchases. That might be a good idea too. Then it says limit your travel. My goodness, this is like fear-based.
Yeah.
And avoid arguments. That's always a good idea. Don't be so hard on yourself. That's a good one. And don't let the stress overwhelm you. That's another good advice. Meditate and relax, always good. And they say who is most affected by Mercury retrograde? People who are very sensitive, and that makes sense. And maybe people who are very suggestible also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, back to the whole giving it power and everything. If you believe Mercury in retrograde has that kind of power, if you believe that, I'm not making fun of you or saying you're wrong because you're believing that makes it so, makes it that it does have that power over you. So that's something that you have to figure out. And if you feel that it does have that power over you, Tony's list is great. Tony's list is great really for any time of year for
Yeah,
that
I
stuff.
agree.
But yeah, think twice.
Yeah.
Um, try and relax and, you know, take a few extra breaths and just
Mhm.
because if you believe it, I kind of think of it, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm belittling it, because if Mercury in retrograde is something significant to you and you are a big believer that it has this power, I'm not making fun of you. I'm suggesting ways that you can deal with it. But I think to a degree, it's a little bit like this when there's two examples for the price of one. First,
Mhm.
when I was in fifth or sixth grade, I noticed for the first time that the 13th of the month, whatever that month was going to be on a Friday. And that was the first time in my little life that I remembered there being a Friday the 13th. And I was absolutely freaked out. I thought there was going to be all kinds of bad things that were going to happen.
Aw.
I just didn't know, but I was, 10, 11. But I remember that I was very stressed out. I had a really lousy day at school. Things did go wrong, but it was my fault because I was so just freaked out about this. I remember years later, I don't know how old I was. There was this little pizza place that was not far from our house, little local place that we like to go to. And my mom got really bad food poisoning from there,
Mm.
or she thinks that it was from there. And she didn't ever want to go back.
Oh, oh,
And at first, I gave her a hard time about that because I thought, even if it was from this place, we've eaten there a million times. It's probably not going to be again. But I started to get that in her head, it was that place. And the thought of going there again was making her very nervous. And whatever she had to eat probably would make her sick because she was doing it to
yeah,
herself.
there you
And I
go.
think there's an element of that to a lot of the hype and hubbub over Mercury in retrograde. And I'm not saying I'm trying not to be dismissive of it and say it's dumb and don't,
Yeah,
because
who
you
knows?
could carry that on to astrology as a whole. If
Yeah.
you believe in it, you can see connections and stuff.
Oh,
I
yeah.
cannot imagine a more picture perfect person for Virgo than myself.
Yes.
But
Uh-huh.
but for people who don't pay attention to it, they think it's all silly superstition. And for those of us who follow it,
Hmm.
it's real. So
It
does
is
that
real.
mean
I agree with that. Yeah.
so does that mean that Mercury in retrograde, based on astrological stuff, is also real?
Maybe.
maybe. But
Yeah.
I think that we give it so much more power
Yeah.
because it's all based on an optical illusion.
Pollution. Right.
So it's all based on something that's not real.
Yes.
And just the fact that as well as we can document it, going back thousands of years, that it used to just mean in the context of an astrological reading that that's probably not going to happen because Mercury's in retrograde. But and that was really it. And
Yeah.
now, oh my God. I mean, I know the world's a more complicated place than it was in 3000 BC, but
Oh, yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, if you are into it and you feel like it's affecting you, I have another list of things that you can
okay.
do that will actually help you. And I think it's more good advice for any time. It says it breathe in the lavender scent. That will help you. Journal your feelings about it. That will help. Acknowledge the past. I don't really know what that means. I guess acknowledge that maybe things happened that might have upset you. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think that means? Acknowledge the past.
Um, acknowledge the past. And in this context, I'm not sure, but I feel like
Yeah.
acknowledge the past is remember, be realistic about what happened and your
Okay.
role in it, perhaps.
I like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
because we're quick to say, oh, Mercury was in retrograde, that made them treat me like crap. Well,
Right.
how were you behaving?
Very true. I like that. And then it says mint will help you. The scent, I don't know if it's the scent or eating the mint. I don't know. Do both.
Yeah.
It can't hurt. And then it says connect with your inner child and have some fun. That makes sense. Maybe not be so serious about it. Maybe be a little more lighthearted. Light candles, and then this one could help with your technology. Cleanse technology like your computer, your phone with crystals. And what are some of the crystals that can help? Well, this particular article said fluorite, amazonite, tourmaline, amethyst, selenite, clear quartz, smoky quartz. Basically, it goes on and on. I think pretty much any crystal is going to work. But citrine is especially good. And let's see, agate, emerald, garnet, jade, kyanite, and shungite.
I am a big fan of kyanite.
Yes, I agree with that. Blue kyanite, so beautiful.
I would
Mhm.
I just
I
say
like
I
that.
think it's so important to sort of recognize first that um, we're not all the same and everything doesn't work the same
Yes.
for everybody. But you are powerful and your energy is powerful and your belief is powerful. And if you can believe that a rock is going to keep your computer working, that's great. And
Mhm.
I hope it really does work. But if you can believe something like that, then you can believe that you control
Mhm.
how Mercury in retrograde affects you. I know so many
Perfect
people
point.
who earlier this year there were a whole bunch of planets that were all in retrograde at the same time.
Yeah.
And there were some people who were absolutely freaking out about that. And I thought, well, so
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
How many times has that happened that you didn't know about it? Because with technology improving, we can see more, so we know more. Maybe we know more about planets and going into retrograde, and certainly we know more than they did at 3000 BC.
Hmm.
I hope we do, but it's really it comes down to you and what you believe and what you decide is working for you or is not working for you. And as far as again acknowledging the past, how has this worked for you in the past? Did you believe this kind of thing, and what happened? And I think you'll find some answers there. I'm not suggesting that because some guy on a podcast said that it doesn't mean anything, that okay, fine. I know it's big, bad, and horrible, but he said not to worry about it. But if you still feel like it's big, bad, and horrible, then it is for you. And you
Hmm.
gotta you gotta do something about that. And if you can't get to the point where you decide it's not big, bad, and horrible, then think about the stuff that I mentioned and Tony's list of stuff that you
Hmm.
can do because you can protect yourself,
Yeah.
whether it's
Yeah.
from Mercury in retrograde or whether it's just from life. And don't be afraid of life, but you can do things to have a better one.
Yeah.
And if it's thinking twice about stuff, if it's not rushing into anything, especially anything big, um, boy, those are two really good things to do
Hmm.
anytime, whether Mercury's in retrograde or not. Um,
Oh, great.
I don't want to. I don't want to beat up on poor Mercury anymore. Did you have anything more that you wanted to add?
I don't think I do. I think you really hit it all
You
for
know,
the
at
most part.
at the end of the article that I found from the BBC, they say many find star signs a gateway to inspiration, entertainment, or some spiritual solace.
Ah,
And and that's I think that's terrific. That's great. If that's what if that's what astrology does for you, if that's what Mercury in retrograde does for you, um, that's terrific. We
yeah,
can all use inspiration, entertainment, and spiritual solace. And
yeah,
that's if that does. I just don't want anybody to flip out because this is happening because it happens like 3 or 4 times
yeah.
every year.
It does. I mean, some people go to great lengths to hide from it,
Yeah.
and they really won't plan a trip. They won't start a job. It's just amazing. They're afraid of, seeing their significant other, things like that. It's just that they kind of limit their lives. I just don't like to see that. I don't like to see people give away their power. That's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah.
But then again, what you said about astrology really touched me before, because I too believe that, especially when they look at the signs and the charts and the different personality traits, that all really resonates with me as being true. So that part of astrology I absolutely believe in. I'm not sure that a daily horoscope that an astrologer puts out is going to be true for everyone born on that, in that sign. But a lot of the time it does hit. It does hit true. But if you get a personal chart done and a personal consultation, then it'll be for you. And that really does resonate. It's unbelievable. So
Well,
maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm being too hard on Mercury retrograde.
well, I think it's like so many things that we've talked about that are under the greater metaphysical umbrella that it's not the
Mm-hmm.
same for everyone.
Yep.
Because there are some people who are, oh, Mercury in retrograde, please give me a break. And there are some
Yeah.
people who are, hey, I'll talk to you in 3 weeks because
Yeah, there really
I'm not going
are.
to use a phone.
Yeah, right.
Um, but for me, I just look at it like when this all started almost 5,000 years ago, maybe more than 5,000. Yeah. Um, the idea was that it just meant something probably wasn't going to happen.
Yeah,
And from going to that, from that to where we are today, wow.
yeah,
I think and maybe this is just the Virgo in me, but I think this is a good time to be overthinking things.
Yeah, it is.
So
That's a
really,
good point. It's a very good time to be overthinking things. It
I don't
is.
know if Mercury in retrograde in Virgo is a thing.
Actually, it started in Virgo this time. That's one thing I did run across. Then it went
Okay.
into Leo,
See,
and yeah, it
I would
started
think
in Virgo this time.
I would think Mercury in retrograde would always be in Virgo because really, just
Don't be so hard on Virgo. Virgo's
no, but
great.
Virgo is all about overthinking. And I
It is.
think and that's a perfect thing. Mercury, if you're listening, I hope you had fun with this, seeing what has become of this little thing that supposedly just meant something's probably not going to happen to where we are with it with the nth degree um, on something that is based on an illusion.
Yeah,
So
that's
anyhow,
amazing. But I mean, maybe if you see it, if you see, well, back in 3000 BC, they wouldn't have known that, of
yeah,
course. That
right.
must have been very upsetting to suddenly see a planet go backwards. I'm sure everything was upsetting back then and everything was magical,
But
right?
when you think about what the way they treated it, that it was, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like they were that upset. Whereas today, it seems like
yeah.
people are much more upset about it.
You know what? You're right. They are, because especially when their electronics go down,
Yeah.
everybody loses their mind
And
when there's no Wi-Fi all the
that
time.
happens all the time,
It sure does.
all the time. Emails don't go through. Your phone's not working right.
Yep.
It just happens all the time. We just,
And then go ahead. And then
we,
when the electricity goes off, we are absolutely out of our minds. We like sitting there like cave people. It's like, right? We think we can't do anything. Life is over. There's no electricity. That's so frightening when you think about it. What slaves we are to this. We need it now. We're spoiled.
we are, we are very
We are
spoiled.
so spoiled.
Maybe that's why it's gotten so much, Mercury retrograde has gotten so big, so much bigger, has so
Yeah.
much more power because of all of these little gadgets that we depend on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Really. Hmm.
I hope that has helped shed some light on Mercury in retrograde for you, um, or that at least you've been entertained
I
by our
think
little.
so. I
Yeah.
learned a couple of things from you tonight, so that's
Oh,
always good. I
well,
thank you
thank you.
for that.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
very welcome. I um I just thought it was time that because this happens so often, Mercury in retrograde keeps coming up, and
It
and
sure does.
yeah. So we've talked about it, and we've given you some tools to, I don't want to say protect yourself from it, but help
Yeah.
get through it,
Yes.
whatever that means to you. And I guess that's about it. Is that about it? Do you have
I
anything
think
else you
it
want?
probably is. Well, I'm going to go out and check and be sure there's no tree on my car.
No. And while it looked like
Other
there was
than that,
another storm brewing, it didn't look like it was as bad as what was coming last night. But
uh-oh.
everything has worked. So
Yeah, very true.
maybe Mercury is letting us in on the joke.
I hope
Anyhow,
so.
thank you for listening. Toni, thanks again for spending some time with us, especially after we had to postpone from last night and do it on a
No
different.
problem. I'm excited. I love to do this with you. It's fun. And
And
I'm learning.
oh, this is something new. Also, if you're listening to this on your phone, you'll see a little thing at the top that says send us a text message. So you can click that and connect that way. And you can send us questions or your comments about Mercury in retrograde or anything else you would like us to know.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
maybe we'll talk about that next time. I'll keep an eye out for it. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. Have a great couple of weeks. We'll be back 2 weeks from yesterday, which really, why would I say that? Because you could be listening to this whenever. Let's see. What is the date that we'll be back? I have it written down here somewhere. Uh, September 3rd.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
right after Labor Day.
Yay.
Okay.
All
When
right.
when even the shadow part of Mercury retrograde should be gone. We'll see.
That'll be good.
You know, if you have this is one last thing, and then we're really if you have some kind of Mercury in retrograde experience, I would love to hear about it. Whether you want to come on and talk about it or you just want to send me a message on social media, I would love to hear about it. You heard about Tony's,
Yeah.
and we'd love to hear about yours if you've got one. Um, Otherwise, thanks and take care of yourselves and tell those close to you that you love them. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Bye, everybody. We love you.